Why the Spanish public is questioning Leonor's preparedness. In recent months, a quiet but growing conversation has begun to ripple across Spain. It's not the kind of dramatic political crisis that dominates headlines, nor is it a scandal fueled by shocking revelations. Instead, it's something more subtle, more complex, and perhaps more consequential for the future of the monarchy. At the center of this conversation is one young woman, Princess Leonor, the heir to the Spanish throne and the daughter of King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia. For years, Leonor has been presented as the carefully prepared future of Spain's constitutional monarchy. Her public appearances have been polished, her speeches measured, and her education internationally respected. From her studies at the prestigious UWC Atlantic College in Wales to her current military training at the General Military Academy of Zaragoza, every step has been designed to build the image of a capable future queen. But recently, that image has begun to face a new level of scrutiny. Across Spanish media, social networks, and political commentary, a growing number of voices are asking a sensitive question: is Princess Leonor truly ready for the immense responsibility that awaits her? To understand why this debate has emerged now, we need to look beyond headlines and into the deeper expectations placed on Spain's future monarch. The modern Spanish monarchy exists in a delicate balance. Unlike absolute monarchies of the past, the Spanish royal family operates within a constitutional framework established after the fall of dictatorship and the transition to democracy. That transformation was symbolized by the reign of King Juan Carlos I, Leonor's grandfather, whose role during Spain's democratic transition earned him enormous respect for decades. But the monarchy's reputation later suffered during a series of controversies that eventually led to Juan Carlos leaving Spain in 2020. Those events reshaped public expectations and placed a heavy burden on the current king, Felipe VI, to restore trust. Since ascending the throne in 2014, Felipe has worked carefully to rebuild the institution's credibility. Transparency measures were introduced, public conduct rules were tightened, and the royal household adopted a more restrained and disciplined public image. In many ways, Princess Leonor represents the continuation of that rebuilding effort. From the moment she was declared heir, her upbringing has been shaped by the knowledge that she will one day inherit not just a crown, but a fragile institution that must constantly prove its relevance in modern democratic Spain. That's why her preparation has been so structured. Her education has been international. Her language skills have been carefully cultivated. Her public speeches have grown increasingly confident. And yet, preparation alone cannot silence all doubts. One reason the Spanish public has begun questioning Leonor's preparedness lies in the simple reality of her age and limited real-world experience. At just 18 years old, she is still in the early stages of the long training path designed for future monarchs. While her academic achievements and public appearances have been widely praised, critics argue that the life of a constitutional monarch demands far more than ceremonial competence. It requires political sensitivity, institutional neutrality, and the ability to represent the unity of a nation that is increasingly divided across ideological and regional lines. Spain today is a country facing complex challenges, economic pressures, debates about regional autonomy, and shifting political alliances. In such an environment, the monarchy is expected to act as a stabilizing symbol. Some observers worry that Leonor, despite her careful preparation, has not yet had enough exposure to the real dynamics of Spanish society. Many Spaniards rarely see her interacting informally with citizens, business leaders, or community organizations outside official ceremonies. As a result, critics argue that her public image sometimes feels distant or overly managed. Another factor fueling the debate is her military training. Like many European heirs to the throne, Leonor has begun a multi-year military education designed to familiarize her with Spain's armed forces. Her training at the General Military Academy in Zaragoza marks the first phase of a program that will eventually include naval and air force instruction. Supporters say this training is essential. Spain's constitution names the monarch as the symbolic commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and military familiarity has long been considered a key component of royal preparation. But others see the training differently. Some critics question whether military symbolism still resonates with younger generations of Spaniards, many of whom view the monarchy primarily as a cultural institution rather than a strategic one. Others argue that the intense focus on discipline and hierarchy may not necessarily prepare a future queen for the more complex social and political expectations of the modern era. These debates are not necessarily attacks on Leonor herself. In fact, many commentators emphasize that the princess has conducted herself with maturity and dedication. Her speeches at major events, including the annual Princess of Asturias Awards ceremony, have often been praised for their clarity and composure. Yet the monarchy operates under constant public evaluation, and every stage of Leonor's development is inevitably viewed through the lens of Spain's broader political climate. One moment that intensified public discussion came during recent coverage of her military training. Images of the young princess participating in demanding exercises circulated widely across Spanish media. Some citizens praised her commitment and resilience. Others, however, interpreted the scenes as evidence that the institution may be placing too much pressure on someone still in the early stages of adulthood. The debate quickly spread online, where social media often amplifies uncertainty far more quickly than traditional institutions can respond. Another reason for the growing scrutiny is generational change. Younger Spaniards did not experience the historical moments that once cemented public support for the monarchy. The democratic transition of the late 20th century feels distant to them. For this generation, the legitimacy of the monarchy must be justified not through history but through relevance. They ask different questions. What role should a modern monarch play? How visible should they be in national debates? And how prepared must they be before inheriting such a symbolic role? In this environment, Princess Leonor's every step becomes part of a broader national conversation about the future of the institution she represents. Still, it's important to recognize that public questioning does not automatically translate into rejection. In fact, many polls suggest that Leonor herself remains one of the most positively viewed members of the royal family. Her calm demeanor, careful speech, and respectful presence have helped her avoid many of the controversies that often surround public figures. But popularity alone does not eliminate scrutiny. If anything, it increases expectations. Observers now watch closely for signs of independence in her public role. They want to see how she will eventually develop her own voice while still respecting the constitutional neutrality required of the Spanish crown. For her parents, particularly King Felipe VI, this phase represents a delicate challenge. The king must continue guiding his daughter's preparation while allowing her enough space to develop the personal authority that future monarchs inevitably need. Too much control could make her appear scripted. Too little structure could expose her to unnecessary risks in an unpredictable political environment. Balancing these forces is never simple. History shows that heirs to the throne often face intense scrutiny long before they ever inherit power. And in many cases, those early doubts become part of the process that ultimately shapes them into stronger leaders. Princess Leonor now finds herself in exactly that stage of transformation. The questions surrounding her preparedness are not simply about military training, education, or public speeches. They reflect a deeper national conversation about what Spain expects from its future monarch. Should she embody tradition? Should she represent modern social values? Or should she somehow balance both in a role that has always required careful neutrality? The answers to those questions will likely evolve over the coming years. Leonor's training will continue. Her responsibilities will gradually expand. And the Spanish public will have more opportunities to observe how she handles the growing expectations placed upon her. What seems certain is that the scrutiny she faces today will play a defining role in shaping her future leadership. Every speech, every appearance, every decision will contribute to the public image that eventually follows her to the throne. For now, the debate about her preparedness remains exactly that, a debate. Not a verdict. And in a constitutional monarchy, public debate itself is part of the process that keeps the institution connected to the society it represents. Princess Leonor's journey toward the Spanish throne is still unfolding. The doubts being raised today may ultimately become the challenges that refine her leadership tomorrow. Because in the end, the real test of a future monarch is not whether questions arise along the way. It is how they respond to them. And for Spain's young heir, that response is only just beginning. The growing discussion around Princess Leonor does not exist in isolation. It reflects a deeper moment of reflection inside Spain itself, a country that has changed dramatically over the past few decades. And as Spain evolves, so too do the expectations placed on the institution that Leonor is destined to lead one day. For many Spaniards, the question is not whether Leonor is intelligent, disciplined, or dedicated. Most observers agree that she possesses those qualities. The real question being asked is more complicated. How will she translate those qualities into leadership in a modern constitutional monarchy? That question has become more prominent because the role of the Spanish monarch is unlike that of political leaders. The king or queen does not govern directly. They do not pass laws, lead political parties, or campaign for policies. Instead, the monarch represents the unity and continuity of the nation. This symbolic role requires a unique kind of preparation. It demands emotional intelligence, cultural awareness, diplomatic skill, and the ability to speak to citizens across political and regional divides. And in a country like Spain, those divides can be particularly sensitive. Over the past decade, debates over regional identity, especially in areas like Catalonia, have challenged the idea of national unity. During moments of tension, the monarchy has often been called upon to represent stability. Many people still remember the firm address delivered by King Felipe VI during the constitutional crisis surrounding the 2017 Catalan independence referendum. His speech was widely interpreted as a defense of Spain's constitutional order. That moment demonstrated the enormous pressure placed on the monarch during times of national uncertainty. For Princess Leonor, the implication is clear. One day, she may face moments that require calm authority and careful judgment, moments that cannot be rehearsed in classrooms or military academies. This reality is why some commentators believe the public is simply looking ahead, trying to imagine how Leonor might perform in such situations. Another element shaping public perception is the way Leonor's public appearances are carefully managed. Since childhood, her schedule has been structured to present a composed and disciplined image. Every speech is meticulously prepared. Every appearance follows precise protocol. This strategy has helped avoid controversy and maintain a sense of dignity around the future queen. However, some critics argue that this level of control may also make it difficult for the public to see Leonor's personal character emerging naturally. Modern audiences often respond more strongly to authenticity than to perfection. They want to understand who public figures are beyond formal ceremonies. This dynamic has been visible in other European monarchies as well. Younger royals across the continent have gradually embraced a more relatable style of public engagement, interacting more directly with citizens and addressing social issues with personal conviction. For Leonor, finding that balance will likely become an important step in her evolution. She must remain politically neutral, as Spain's constitution requires. But at the same time, she must develop a public voice that feels genuine rather than purely ceremonial. Another factor influencing the conversation about her preparedness is the rapid pace of modern communication. In previous generations, heirs to the throne could develop their roles relatively quietly. Public information moved slowly, and fewer people closely analyzed every stage of royal training. Today, the situation is completely different. Every photograph, every short video clip, every public gesture can spread instantly across digital platforms. This constant visibility magnifies both praise and criticism. It also means that younger members of royal families grow up under an unprecedented level of observation. For Princess Leonor, this environment adds another layer of complexity to her journey. Even routine activities, such as participating in military exercises or attending official ceremonies, can become subjects of national discussion. Sometimes those discussions are supportive. Other times they reflect uncertainty about the monarchy's future role in Spanish society. Yet despite the scrutiny, many observers emphasize that Leonor's training process is still only beginning. Her military education will continue across different branches of the armed forces. Each stage is designed to give her a broader understanding of Spain's national institutions. After completing this training, she will likely take on more frequent official duties, representing Spain in diplomatic visits, cultural events, and international gatherings. Those experiences may ultimately provide the real-world exposure that some critics feel is currently missing. In fact, several royal historians point out that many successful monarchs grew into their roles gradually. Confidence, diplomatic skill, and public presence are not traits that appear overnight. They develop through years of experience. For Leonor, those years are still ahead. Another dimension of the debate involves the expectations placed on the first future queen regnant Spain has seen in centuries. While Spain has had influential queens in its history, the modern constitutional system has largely been led by male monarchs. Leonor represents a generational shift. Her eventual reign could symbolize a new chapter for the institution, one shaped by contemporary ideas about leadership, representation, and equality. For many young Spaniards, this possibility is inspiring. They see in Leonor not just a royal figure, but a symbol of a changing Spain that reflects modern values while maintaining historical continuity. At the same time, such symbolism also increases the pressure on her preparation. When expectations rise, so does the intensity of public attention. Every decision she makes in the coming years will contribute to the narrative surrounding her future reign. And narratives, once formed, can be difficult to change. For this reason, the royal household appears to be approaching Leonor's development with extreme caution. They understand that her image must evolve gradually. Too rapid a transformation could feel forced. Too slow a progression could deepen doubts about her readiness. Navigating this path requires patience from both the monarchy and the public. In many ways, the current debate about Leonor's preparedness may actually signal something positive about Spain's democratic culture. Citizens feel comfortable discussing the future of their institutions openly. They analyze leadership qualities, question traditions, and consider how historic roles should adapt to modern realities. These conversations are part of how constitutional systems evolve. For Princess Leonor, they represent the environment she will inherit, a society that expects transparency, responsibility, and thoughtful leadership from all public figures. The young princess cannot control every opinion expressed about her, but she can continue building the qualities that will eventually define her as a leader. Discipline, patience, a willingness to learn, and perhaps most importantly, the ability to listen. Because when the day eventually comes for Leonor to ascend the throne, the questions being asked today will transform into expectations for tomorrow. And by that time, Spain will no longer be wondering whether she is prepared. They will be watching how she leads. As the discussion surrounding Princess Leonor continues to circulate across Spain, one important truth remains clear: the debate is not simply about a young royal's abilities. It is about the future of an institution that has long stood at the center of Spanish identity. For centuries, the Spanish crown has symbolized continuity through moments of profound national change. From the restoration of democracy to the challenges of the modern era, the monarchy has repeatedly been asked to adapt to a society that never stands still. Today, that responsibility gradually shifts toward a new generation. Princess Leonor represents that transition. She is not just the daughter of King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia, she is the future face of a constitutional monarchy that must continue proving its relevance in the 21st century. And relevance, in modern democracies, cannot be inherited automatically. It must be earned through credibility, responsibility, and a visible commitment to public service. This is why the questions about Leonor's preparedness carry such weight. They reflect the expectations of citizens who want reassurance that the monarchy will remain capable of representing a diverse and evolving nation. But it is equally important to recognize that leadership rarely emerges fully formed. Every monarch in history has faced moments of doubt before eventually defining their role. Even those who later became symbols of stability once stood at the beginning of their journey, learning under the watchful eyes of their people. For Leonor, that journey is still unfolding. Her military training, her education, and her increasing public responsibilities are all part of a long process designed to prepare her for the unique demands of the crown. The pressures she faces today may ultimately serve a purpose. Public scrutiny can be challenging, but it also pushes future leaders to grow stronger, more thoughtful, and more aware of the responsibilities they carry. In Leonor's case, the scrutiny surrounding her preparation may become the very force that shapes her into a more resilient and confident future monarch. Another factor worth remembering is that the role she will eventually assume is not one of political power, but of national representation. Spain's monarch does not govern. Instead, the crown functions as a symbol, a reminder of shared history and collective identity. In times of unity, the monarch celebrates the nation's achievements. In times of division, the monarch is expected to embody calm and continuity. This delicate role requires patience and emotional intelligence as much as it requires formal training. And those qualities often develop gradually through experience. As Princess Leonor continues to take part in national ceremonies, diplomatic events, and institutional responsibilities, the Spanish public will have more opportunities to observe her growth. Each speech she delivers, each public appearance she makes, each moment she represents Spain on the international stage, all of these experiences will slowly shape the image of the leader she may one day become. For now, the conversation surrounding her preparedness should perhaps be seen less as a judgment and more as part of a national reflection. Spain is asking itself what kind of monarchy it wants in the decades ahead. A purely traditional symbol, a modernized institution that engages more closely with society, or a careful blend of both? The answers to those questions will influence how Leonor ultimately defines her own role. Yet despite the uncertainties, one thing remains undeniable. Princess Leonor has shown a consistent sense of duty from a very young age. Her speeches have reflected seriousness and awareness of the responsibility she carries. Her training has demonstrated discipline and dedication. And her public conduct has largely avoided the controversies that often complicate the lives of high-profile figures. These traits suggest that while her preparation is still in progress, the foundations of leadership are already being built. Over time, those foundations will either strengthen or weaken depending on the choices she makes and the experiences she gains. The Spanish public will continue watching, evaluating, and discussing, just as citizens in a democratic society always do. But the final chapter of this story has not yet been written. Princess Leonor stands at the beginning of a path that could span decades. The doubts being voiced today are part of the process that shapes future leaders. And sometimes, the very questions that challenge a rising figure are the ones that ultimately define their strength. Years from now, Spain may look back on this period not as a moment of uncertainty, but as the early stage of a transformation. A time when a young princess stood under intense public scrutiny while learning what it truly means to represent a nation. Whether those early doubts fade or evolve into lasting confidence will depend on the journey that still lies ahead. But one thing is certain. The future of Spain's monarchy will not be determined by speculation alone. It will be determined by the leadership Princess Leonor demonstrates when the responsibility of the crown finally becomes her own.